I'm Sylvie Hale, and welcome to our fourth webinar in the Pathway Navigation series. Right now, it's the last one that's been scheduled, but there may be a couple more in the works, so stay tuned for that. Today's webinar is going to be focused on the new student experience. We're going to hear from Valencia College, and I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Landon Shepard, who's the Campus Dean of Learning Support at Valencia College. Just a couple of quick highlights. Just want to mention that our agenda here, we have about an hour together, and we plan to split it three ways. Roughly 15-20 minutes to hear from Dr. Shepard. Then we'll have a facilitated Q&A. So as you're hearing him speak and talk about their new student experience process, please jot down your questions. We're going to have plenty of time for Q&A. And then we'll spend some time at the end for some reflection and discussion about, you know, what does it mean for you based on what you've heard? What are some takeaways from you, and what might you be doing at your respective colleges? So we'll have a discussion around that as well. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over the microphone, if you will, to Dr. Landon Shepard. Take it away.
So as mentioned, my name is Landon. I work at Valencia College, and y'all invited me to talk about the new student experience. So I am the Dean of Learning Support, and essentially what that means is I manage the faculty who are faculty and advisors who help facilitate the new student experience course, which is part of the overall experience that we offer here at Valencia. So if you go to the next slide, this is some general sort of commonly asked questions about Valencia, just sort of demographic information from our fact book. So we serve approximately 62,000 students. We over 2 counties, which is Orange and Osceola County, which is where Disney and Orlando is located. Our average age of students is about 23 years old, which is relatively young. And you can see the breakdown sort of by ethnicity. And we have 7 different campuses, and this is a program that we've scaled across all 7 campuses. You move on to the next slide. So this is a slide that sort of helps demonstrate how many years we've been at work at trying to develop and implement the new student experience. So you can see going back about 30 years, the original idea started from a Title III grant many years ago, where we started talking about the need for a student success course at the college, which at the time was named Student Success, and it was SLS 1122. And it now has been evolved into the new student experience, which is the course, which uses that same prefix, SLS 1122. The original idea sort of grew out of the Title III work and the idea of developmental advising. And as you can see, lots of other initiatives over the last 30 years that several Title III grants, strategic plans, our participation in Achieving the Dream dating back to 1996, I believe, or I'm sorry, 2006. Foundations of Excellence work, which was primarily focused on the first year experience. That was through the participation with John, I believe it's John Gardner, from his organization, Foundations of Excellence. We had the developmental education initiative back in about 2009 to 2012, which was a 3-year grant through Achieving the Dream. And then most recently, the Press to Success or Press for Success grant, which is also funded by Achieving the Dream. So lots of influence from Achieving the Dream over the last 10 or 12 years, which has led us to the new student experience, this course that we've been developing. Any questions about the timeline over the last 20 years? So you can see it's sort of been an evolution over the last 20 plus years at the college, moving in this direction. And really what Start Right is, it's sort of a philosophy that was thought of and adopted by the faculty about 20 years ago. And essentially what the Start Right philosophy says is that the first minute of the first day of the first class that students go to is an opportunity for learning. And there's lots of focus at the front door. both in the classroom and getting students prepared and ready to learn that first day in class. And it has had rather significant influences on a lot of our policies and procedures at the college, as well as our sort of practice at the college. So there's been about 20 years of observation at the college that if students start right, they're more likely to be successful, and specifically, they're more likely to graduate. And you can listen to the video, watch it a little bit more. It's one of our big ideas at the college. We've got several big ideas. One of the other more popular ones is that any student can learn anything under the right condition. And it's really about the culture at Valencia and the belief that students can learn. And then, like I said, the big idea number 2 is that, the starting right is really critical for student success moving forward. So watch that video when you have a little bit of time. I think you'll find it to be inspiring. So the next slide is some data that is really connected to the Start Right philosophy. So as you can see, over a 10-year period of time, there's lots of consistency in student success when it comes to their success in the first 5 classes. So this is data that Sandy alludes to in the video, but gives you very specific, sort of rationale why starting right in college is important. So the green line there is the 5-year graduation rate for students in a cohort who were successful in all of their first 5 classes. And you see the graduation rate is at about 59%, almost 60%. 60% of them will graduate in 5 years. You see that number drops down significantly down to about 33% if a student fails or withdraws from even one of their first 5 classes. So if they're only successful in 4 courses, and that's what that red line represents, the likelihood of their success, or I should say their likelihood of their graduating in 5 years drops almost in half. And you can see the students who are least likely to be successful, only about 6% of them are graduating in 5 years, or students who are, that pink line is successful in less than 3 of their first 5 courses. So this is data that represents or demonstrates to us the importance of the student experience in the first 5 classes at Valencia, and is really sort of the foundation of why we offer the new student experience course, which we're primarily talking about today, but the overall experience, the new student experience. So our accreditation body has a 10-year reaffirmation process where we have to create a 5-year quality enhancement plan, or a QEP. And leading up to the development of the new student experience, the college was having conversations about our next big idea. And like I mentioned, some of the big ideas we have are starting right, and all students can learn under the right conditions. So we were sort of in search of our next big idea, which was going to become the focus of our work for our quality enhancement plan during our reaffirmation. And there were 3 themes that were emerging. Students needed purpose. So in the yellow there on the left-hand side of your screen, purpose seemed to be something that the faculty and the staff were talking about. Students who had purpose were more likely to sort of dedicate themselves to their studies and more likely to graduate. Navigation, we talked about how students needed help with financial and academic planning, and about how their navigation through the college was important to help them with that. And then finally, toward the bottom in the red, talks about student learning, and there were a lot of things that kept coming up. Information literacy, learning support. Blackboard was the system that we were using at the time. Now we're using Canvas now. But student learning seemed to be a focus of a lot of the conversations. And at some point in time, there became a better sense of clarity that, and we had recently facilitated conversations at the college through the Foundations of Excellence work on the first year experience. And there was some sort of an emphasis or synergy around the idea of providing students a comprehensive first year experience or a new student experience. And they could pull together all 3 of these ideas that we were kicking around about purpose, navigation, and student learning. And that's really where the quality enhancement plan was named by the faculty to become the new student experience. And it would be a deliberate effort to sort of provide this experience for students at the front door. And it really aligned well with our Start Right idea. So if you go to the next slide, So this is a lot, and we sort of started calling these this graphic the chutes and ladders of the QEP, because there were so many steps and arrows and information here. But essentially what we've layered onto this slide is our life map sort of philosophy, and life map is at the bottom. And there's this continuum of sort of how students progress through the college, from their college transition to their introduction to the college, progression to degree, and graduation. And that is really rooted, our life map philosophy is rooted in developmental advising. So, and you overlay that with the student's experience, and you can see that first yellow box on the left-hand side, required universal advising for first term at Valencia. So the new student experience became that mechanism at the college where each student who comes to the college would have a declared advisor who would also be teaching their new student experience course. And you see that middle box, the yellow, gray, and green box, talks about some of the activities that are going to be happening during that experience, the new student experience, co-curricular, career and academic advising. It's sort of an extension to the orientation program that was in existence at the college. And it would be a credit earning sort of coordinated experience for students. And then there would be a handoff. Those three arrows kind of in the middle of this graphic demonstrates handing off of a student from their first term advisor, who is their NSC faculty member, to their AA degree or their pre-major or their AS degree advisor. So we have essentially two kinds of advisors. We call them either career program advisor for the AS degree programs, or a transfer advisor, which is for the AA degree programs. So there would be this official sort of handing off at the conclusion of the course to these specialized advisors who might be advising in STEM or art or business or something that is specific in nature to those students in their major or degree program. And then finally, all the arrows direct students either into a career job placement or transferring to a university, and many of them we know will go on to UCF through Direct Connect. So this is just a visualization that sort of helped us with the overall student pathway through the experience. So the next slide provides some of the language from our QEP document. So essentially it would be a 3-credit course, which would be an extension to the orientation program. We would integrate the student success skills that we've deemed important at the college, like note-taking, time management, those types of things. And then there would be a focus on career and academic advising, and each student would create an academic plan. And all of this would occur within their first, at that time, we said 15 credit hours. Later, we realized that either 15 credit hours or within their first 2 terms, they would have this course. And there's actually a requirement at the college that all students must complete the course within their first 2 terms. If not, we contact them, we help encourage them, we help assist them in getting enrolled in the course, and ultimately they're placed onto a hold. A hold is placed on them if they don't register for the course within those first 2 semesters. So moving on to the next slide. This sort of talks about the moment in time. So there was a grant that we were awarded. It was a 2-year, $100,000 grant funded by Walmart through Achieving the Dream. And this was the time in our history when we redesigned the old student success course, which is really focused on helping students with their preparedness for college, and was mandated for students who are in developmental education courses. And we transitioned that from sort of a focus on developmental students to all students, and how we can help all students at the front door. And it was that grant that was, there was a lot of faculty engagement, lots of conversations with faculty about what types of things the college can do to help best serve students at the front door. We solicited for faculty to get involved. We used what we call the destinations model, which is basically half-day faculty development, where they developed lesson plans and an assessment for that lesson plan, which was based on the outcomes of the course. And they submitted those for payment. I believe it was a $500 stipend that we were paying faculty. We had approximately 60 faculty involved in the process. In the end, we had approximately 30 that submitted for compensation lesson plans and the assessment plan. And it was those lesson plans and ideas that were essentially sort of curated and placed into the new course, the redesigned course. So the next slide. So a little bit more details about the QEP, the Quality Enhancement Plan by our regional accreditation. It was a 5-year plan. And the first year that we rolled out the NSE course, so let me back up a little bit. So back with the press grant, as we were developing the course, we ran a pilot of the course for 1 semester. And it was in the spring of 2014. And I believe there was like 28 sections college-wide that we ran across the 6 campuses that we had at that time. So the footprint was significant enough that we felt comfortable with the new curriculum, and then we ramped up and scaled and implemented it in the fall of 2014, spring of 2015. And approximately 7,500 students took it during that first year. And then by the second year, we fully scaled it to 15,000 students, and our current enrollment on an annual basis is approximately 16,800 students taking the course on an annual basis. This required us to rethink how we were credentialing for the course. We've gone through several iterations of this, but essentially in order to credential somebody to teach the course, they must have a master's degree plus additional training, and the training is about 22 hours and includes instruction on how to teach the course, and then instruction on how to provide the advising. It's hybrid, it's face-to-face and online through Canvas, and it's about 22 hours long. So that was a little bit about the implementation of it early on. One unique thing that I think I should probably point out, and thank you for going to the next slide, but let me make a note. During this time, there was a couple of legislative changes in the state of Florida. One of them reduced the number of general education courses from 36 hours down to 30 hours. And that we lived in that for about a year. And then the lobbyist in Tallahassee, in our state capital, actually convinced the state legislators to reverse that law. So we went from 36 hours of gen ed down to 30 hours of gen ed, and then we went back to 36 hours because we were able to convince them that that was complicating the curriculum at the state and state universities and state colleges. So in doing that, it opened the door to require another course within the gen ed, and the new student experience course was voted by the faculty to be a requirement for all students seeking the AA degree. And then the commitment was made that all students getting an AS degree would have to also take the course as well as part of their AS degree. And I can talk to more of that if you're interested, if you have more questions about that. But so anyways, going on to the next slide. So the folks who teach this course are unique because they're faculty advisors. We have approximately 24 full-time faculty at the college teaching the course across the 7 campuses. The full-time faculty teach 5 sections of 30 students for 150 student caseload. They teach only in the fall and the spring, and they're assigned to work in student services during the summertime to help students with their transition into the college during the summer. And during that time, they're serving as advisors and serving student services as NSO, new student orientation presenters. The part-time faculty essentially do the same thing as far as teaching. They teach individual sections of 30 students. They provide at least 2 hours of advising per week per section, and there's additional compensation for advising. How they differ is they don't work in student services as advisors, and they don't have a responsibility to advising in the summertime. So going on to the next slide. So there are more aspects to the actual new student experience than just the course. I think today we were primarily going to talk about the course, but I wanted to mention that there were other things happening. There was a redesign of the new student orientation program during this time period, and the new student experience faculty were involved in that redesign, and since then are involved in the facilitation of that program. And essentially the orientation program is required of all students coming to Valencia. There's a hybrid or mixed mode approach where they do a portion of their online onboarding onboarding online in Canvas, and later they attend a face-to-face orientation, and many times in the summertime it's a new student experience faculty member giving that orientation. We do delineate a difference between transfer students and the new students when they come to the orientation because they have unique needs. We also at the college created Start Right guides, which is essentially a piece of paper that provides them the course options that they have at the front door. And that really helps drive students to make wise decisions about course selection in their first term. And those Start Right guides are provided to students at orientation as a way of guiding them into picking the right classes in their first term. And then lastly, the student handbook. Every student is provided a student handbook. Every year we update it with information pertinent to students, and it's distributed. Those handbooks are handed out through the new student orientation program, and it is used and referenced in the new student experience course. So it's I wouldn't call it the textbook, but it's one of the things early on that students were using because it's chock full of information to help new students with time management and how to access the resources and those types of things that we have on campus. Recently, the student handbook was pared back. It went from, I don't know, maybe 200 pages down to about 50 pages. And that was based on feedback from students that it was too lengthy, too much information, and if you could pare back to the necessities. So we made a rather significant redesign of the handbook in the last academic year. So going on to the next slide, these are the outcomes for the course. You'll notice that they all start with the letter P, and that was heavily influenced by our college president, Sandy Shugard. He gave a speech, he was talking about how the students experience the college, and they experience it through these Ps. If you move on to the next slide, each of those outcomes for the course can be traced back to one of the 4 major assignments. So these 4 assignments are required of faculty to teach and to use. So the purpose paper, so students write a paper about their purpose for going to college. They create an education plan, which we call the academic blueprint. Their final exam is a presentation called the Final Story Project, where they essentially talk about where they're going to be in 10 years from now. And they have to articulate their purpose and how they got there through Valencia, the pathway through the college. There are co-curricular activities, assignments that they do outside of the class, which they reflect on, and oftentimes is connected to their major or their purpose. And I should mention the course doesn't really have a textbook. The textbook that we use is the Clifton Strengths Finder or Clifton Strengths for Students book. So that is really the book that we use, and it's about $20 depending on the markup that you charge in your bookstore. The next slide provides, so this provides sort of an overview of the other things that happen in the course. And all of these things were recommendations from the faculty during the redesign of the course, during the press grant, the Achieving the Dream grant funded by Walmart. So we have the peace and justice principles, which is basically how we treat and communicate with each other. You know, the typical things that you find in a college success course, like note-taking, time management, study skills, and communication skills. We spend time with career exploration. Most of the faculty will require the students to conduct a career interview where they interview somebody in the job that they want to have. We spend a bit of time on financial literacy, and there's a common assignment called the Cost of College, where students do the research about how much it costs to complete their degree at Valencia and beyond. We talk about emotional intelligence. We talk about how they pick their major. So this is a very rough overview of the course. And of course, faculty go into more detail or more depth depending on the needs of the students. Y'all asked for data. So if you go to the next slide, there's a little bit of data here. It's kind of old. It's from SESI from 2015. We recently administered the SESI in the spring of 19, this past semester. So I know we're 2 cycles behind in SESI, but some of the career-specific data that we have is we're performing well, this course, students who are taking this course seem to be performing well in the area of career goals. The nationwide cohort is saying about 57.2% has a clear career goal in mind, and you can see it broken down by different ethnicities and gender. And I know for many institutions, African American men seem to be lagging behind in performance indicators and success data. So that's one that we've been particularly worried about at the college. And you see that for some reason, the course is helping provide more clarity and career goals when the students are taking the NSE course. So that was positive for us over the last few years as we've been studying some of the data that we've been collecting about the course. We've collected a lot of data, and I wasn't entirely sure where to head with that conversation, but I wanted to show the types of data that we're collecting. If you go to the next slide, we have strategic indicators data and reports that we've been developing over the years about retention and graduation rates. More recently, we've been working on, instead of just looking at strategic indicators, but also looking at the inputs, outputs, and outcomes of the program. So let me give you an example. The program was designed in order to engage students into the development of their educational plans. So we see that as an input or an out, the input is planning, the output is creating an education plan, and we think that's linked to the outcome, which is more retention, higher persistence or higher retention rates. So we're starting to think about the new student experience in terms of inputs, outputs, and outcomes, as opposed to just success indicators, such as retention. Recently, we put together a data report sort of trying to showcase the success of the program. And we've discovered that we're not always particularly good at collecting data. So be mindful of, when we started the QEP, we thought that we would see a lift in retention. And there's a lot of noise in the data, and it's difficult to say that when we started NSE, that NSE made a difference. It's hard to isolate the variable that NSE increased or decreased success rates, because there's so many variables at play at the college as an institution as a whole. So I would be thoughtful and be mindful, if you think that if you think you're doing this for data purposes, make sure that you're very clear about what type of data that you're trying to collect. So for instance, we should have said something like, there's a goal that 90% of the new students will have an education plan by the end of their first term. That would have been something that would have been easier to measure than, and one of the challenges is that our system has changed 3 times in the last 5 years about how we capture their education planning. So it's difficult for us to say how many plans are out there, because it's been in 3 different systems over the last 3 years. And then the other thing is really the ownership of the course. The faculty who teach and sort of provide leadership to this course are generalist. And it's challenging at times because they want ownership of the course as their discipline. But we have to remember that the purpose of the course is to serve students across all disciplines. So that's been a little bit of a challenge over the years, as far as sometimes faculty, it's difficult to get faculty to understand ownership and how to make improvements to the course, and then knowing when they can make improvements to the course, and when when there needs to be a larger scale sort of collaboration in student services and across the other academic disciplines.
How did you get to scale? What did it take to, with sort of the nugget of an idea, and then really being able to implement this fully at 7 campuses? Given that you do, as you mentioned, you have different data systems and different mechanisms.
I think there was a perfect storm, and it's very rare that you say that. I'm glad that the state made us do something. But they made us start to do something, and it was really big. All 11 state universities and 28 community colleges in Florida were required to reduce their gen ed by 2 classes. And as you can imagine, that created all kinds of tension and debate across disciplines. So the humanities department was arguing and fighting with social sciences to preserve their territory. There was all kinds of debates happening. We didn't have a department. There was no such thing as the Department of Learning Success or Student Success or NSE. But there was this momentum that we needed to help students start right. And students don't do optional. So we knew we had to create and it was hard enough to get students to do an orientation for 3 hours, a face-to-face. So the only way that we saw this thing working was if we created a course. And we made it 3 credits, and we were able to fit it into the gen ed when the state went back and said, you know what, never mind, bad idea, you can have your 36 hours of gen ed. And essentially what we did was we took away a humanities requirement and we added it in as a new student experience requirement and put it in within the communications department. It's not really a communications course, but we fit it in there in order for it to be part of the gen ed program for the AA degree. And then it also resides within the communication area for all of the AS degrees as well, so that all AS students have to take it as in addition within their program to fit within the 60 hours of their AS program. There's a couple of, I should mention that there's a disclaimer to that. There's a couple of AS degree programs that couldn't fit an additional 3 credit course in. So what they've had to do is they had to take the outcomes of the course and embed it inside of their introductory course in their program. So like the Fire Academy or the Fire Science program, they said, we don't have enough room to add another course. So they took our outcomes, embedded into their introduction to the Fire Science program course. So really, I mean, it was sort of a perfect storm. Faculty wanted the course, and the door sort of got opened up by the gen ed changes, and then the QEP happened all at the same time. So that was like the third thing that really allowed us. I don't think if one of those 3 things didn't happen, we wouldn't have a 3 credit course called the New Student Experience.
Great. I see a couple of questions coming in here from the chat, and the first question is Alex Berry. How did you all approach issues with silos? We all talk about being student-centered, but we often struggle to take the first step as an institution.
Yeah, I think that's a culture thing at Valencia. I think we do really well to work across silos. It's not easy. So let me share another link with you that actually is on the Valencia website, where Dr. Shugart, our college president, spends time talking about culture and if you ask Sandy, his #1 goal is to develop the right culture or the right attitude at the college and really cultivating that and sustaining that. So I really think it's a culture thing, and it's difficult to articulate and explain how we got there. It's just something that we do. And I mean, I've worked at other institutions, and you definitely see, you call it the 2 sides of the house, the faculty academic affairs versus student affairs. Technically, organizationally speaking, we have an organization chart that articulates the difference, but we don't see a difference. Like I have faculty who are teachers, but they work in student services in the summertime. So we have a dean of students, and then we have deans of communications, and then there's me. So we all just work together, and we're able to look past those sort of silos and sort of habits.
So Claudia asks, are your embedded advisors instructional faculty or counseling faculty?
It's difficult to do. I mean, I would call them instructional faculty. Their primary role in fall and spring is to teach, like I mentioned in a slide, 5 classes. They have about 10 hours a week devoted to office hours, which is really advising hours. They look and act just like any other faculty who teach composition or mathematics or biology. So I would call them instructional, like really they're instructional faculty who have an advising responsibility. They're not as involved in sort of some of the formal governance process at the college, although some of them do seek out opportunities to get involved through faculty association and the such. They don't go through tenure, so which is unique. Our tenure process is rather lengthy and complicated. I think it's rigorous for the right reasons. It's a 5-year process. These faculty are what we call annually appointed, so they have an annual contract. I wouldn't call them, we have counselors who work in student services, so I wouldn't call them counseling faculty either. They're really instructional instructional faculty who have advising as a responsibility.
Great. And then Carl Cameron asks, can you talk about My Career Planner? What led to the choice of using the service and how well has it been working?
So we have something at the college called Life Map, which is a developmental advising philosophy. We coined that phrase. It's actually trademarked, I think, or it's got a service protection on it. Within our Atlas portal, we have the My Career Planner, which I believe is something that we created. Like, we coined the term My Career Planner, and essentially it's a collection of services for students to complete assessments, like the Myers-Briggs, the Holland's Interest Inventory. It's sort of a suite of software programs that they can use to do career research.
Are embedded advising or other support services organized by your meta majors?
Yes, so we have meta majors, which is another thing that the state made us do, and I'm not sure about y'all in California, but so the state said that we had to place all of our degree programs within a meta major, and just so that we're using the same language, a meta major is sort of a collection of majors under like an umbrella, so to speak. So like we have a meta major in Florida called Business and Commerce. So like business and finance and accounting would all fall underneath that meta major. And yes, so we have designated advisors, either CPAs, which are career program advisors, which is specific for AS students, and then TPAs, or transfer program advisors, and all of them are focused on a meta major or a collection of majors or programs, so that they have sort of a specialty. So we might have an advisor who specializes in STEM versus an advisor who specializes in business. So yes, we do lump them together to specialize in advising. The students experience that level of advising post the new student experience, so after their first term at the college, or second term, I should say.
In that graphic, which I don't know if we shared with you sort of the roadway graphic that is sort of the framework that the San Diego and Imperial County regions are looking at. There's definitely some similarity, but one of the questions that came to my mind is when you were talking about sort of the handoff from that first year, let's see what we were calling them, the first year advisor, and then on to, so how does that happen? Is there sort of a student, is there a electronics or a technology that helps with that handoff? You know, what does that look like?
It happens in a couple of ways. In the course itself, so normally a student experiences the course in their first or second term, right around, so let me kind of block it out in very large, like, weeks of unit, sort of like unit plans. So at the beginning of the semester, they're doing a lot of self-exploration, personal exploration, and like career exploration. So it's common for the instructor to have the students do the strengths assessment, Myers-Briggs, the interest inventory, the Holland's Interest Inventory, to learn about themselves and their purpose for going to college. And then they write a purpose paper where they articulate why they went to college and what their purpose in life is, if they can. And then that sort of evolves into picking a major and starting to create an education plan where they actually pick the classes they're going to take, but you need to pick a major in order to do that. And then toward the end of the semester, they have completed their plan, and we introduce to them the idea that the advisor and instructor of that course can help you to a point. Like, you can get general career counseling, you can pick a major, you can get headed in the right direction and do your academic blueprint. And the academic blueprint is essentially a term-by-term plan. Term-by-term, which classes am I going to take, am I going to pick based on my degree program? And we introduced to them, at least at my campus, at the Osceola campus, there's a presentation that advisors go into the classroom and introduce themselves and say, if you're a STEM major, this is who your STEM advisor is. Her name is Tiana. This is where she's located, and this is the majors that she advises for and how she can help you. So Tiana might actually do that presentation, or it might be somebody else on Tiana's behalf, because we've got about 15 on our campus advisors who have a specialty. We can use technology, so we've toyed with the idea of in Atlas, in the student in the student portal, when they pull a degree audit, it would say who their advisor is, and we can put in there that their advisor is the instructor of their NSE course, and then when they finish the course, we can go back in there later and update it to the advisor based on their meta major. One thing that happens, speaking of meta majors in the course, is a lot of times students don't know what their major really is. They come to the college, they fill out their application, they think they're going to do business, but they might pick the wrong business program. Halfway through the course, when they're doing their academic blueprint, they have more information, and they better know how to say, my major is business, I'm getting an AA degree, and I'm going to do direct connect to UCF. And then they discover when they pull their degree out to do their assignment for the academic blueprint, they realize that they selected an AS degree, like in marketing or something, accounting, that might be incorrect. So we see a lot of students correcting their major at that point in order to complete their academic blueprint assignment. And all that is coming together, and we're starting to talk to them about, well, now that you know that, now your new advisor is going to be, Joanna, who can help you specifically as a business major in moving forward. And they can come back and see us. They do that all the time. I have students that stick with me for their whole 2 or 3 years, and then others go on to their specialized advisor, and sometimes they do a little bit of both,
It definitely sounds like it's a sort of case by case, or, depending on what's needed. But it's really interesting that, the process of going through the course actually has the student then proactively sort of updating, their own information and their academic plan, which is really interesting.
Yeah, the first year we did this, the registrar's office, actually, we were in a meeting with them, and they said, the craziest thing just happened. We got a bunch of change of major forms in November. And we're like, oh no, that's not crazy, because we were telling them in the course, you got to pull a degree audit. They noticed that it's the wrong major or program, go fix it. And they did. And they're like, oh, well, that explains it, and you've got 7,000 students taking the course. Of course, when they get to that point, they're going to start changing their majors.
Right. And then Claudia asked, how do you handle the possible comment on academic freedom in order to develop consistency in the curriculum for this course?
So I would go back to the 4 required assignments slide, and it was the slide about the purpose paper, the academic blueprint, the co-curricular, and the final story project. So those 4 assignments, yep, there, that one. So everybody uses the same book, Strengths Quest for students, or Strengths Finder for students. The 4 required assignments. And really, in order to best serve students to achieve those 4 assignments, it's pretty similar what everyone is doing. I mean, the outcomes, just like any other course, like composition, the outcomes are the same across the college. Or biology, Bio 1 is the same outcomes across the college. So it's very similar in that regard, and the faculty have academic freedom. And they can teach to their strengths. I mean, we've got faculty who are really good at teaching financial literacy and might focus on that a little bit in the course, but they're still achieving these sort of 4 staple assignments or activities in the course.
I'm curious if there were any specific tools recommended for tracking a lot of the activities. I know a lot of us here in our region are struggling with identifying a specific tool. And also, I wanted to know if you could elaborate just real briefly with your Career Center collaborations with both instruction and student services.
Okay, so let me start with the last part of that question, the collaboration with the Career Center. So the Career Center is housed in Student Affairs, in that silo or in that side of the house, so to speak. They report directly to our directors of advising, and it's like the advising and counseling office and the Career Center they're in separate offices, but they work together really closely. But they report through the director of advising into the dean of students area. So organizationally speaking, that's a student services function, the Career Center. They work very closely with our faculty in the new student experience because our new student experience faculty work in student services in the summertime. It is common for the Career Center folks to do presentations in our new student experience courses. I've even had, so I had somebody who was my part-time instructor for NSE who later became the coordinator of the Career Center. So there's a lot of synergy between the areas and a lot of sharing of content and resources. And that's just part of the culture that we like to share those types of things. So it is very common that probably 2 or 3 times a semester, the workshops being offered by the Career Center are pushed out to our NSE faculty, who then make it available. They promote them through their online Canvas course. We use a system called AccuSQL to track student traffic in our tutoring areas. It's called Tutor Track or AccuSQL. It is, I don't know if it's something that you've heard of. It's actually a local Orlando company, and it's just very basic. It's a cloud-based tracking system that we use to keep track of students in it, and it will interface with our Banner system. That is what we use in learning support. Now in advising, they've been using Who's Next. We are in the process of identifying a CRM, but we're a ways away from making that decision of which product to go with. And we are a Banner institution.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Another system called Tableau. If you want to talk about data like course level success data and demographics, we use Tableau Reader, which helps us look at data, our course level success data.
And is that institutionalized? Any of these tools?
Tableau is. So our institutional research department, IR, they like Tableau. They feed most of their reports into Tableau, and then the end user, the departments and deans, faculty can use the Tableau reader to sift through the data on our own.
Thank you.
So we've come past our hour, and just want to echo I don't know if you've noticed, Dr. Shepard, but a few of our participants thank you profusely. Just to close this out, for folks that are on the webinar from the region, really want to encourage you to reflect on what you heard here today and really think about, how might this apply to you all. It's really clear that some of this is very contextual, and as Dr. Shepard mentioned, culture is a big part of this, and so what might be happening in Florida may not apply here in California, but that's not to say that there aren't some really key strategies or ideas that might be worth really exploring here. So I really encourage you to reflect on what you heard here, and then we'll certainly send out a follow-up email with additional resources that we will post. And if you have further questions, we'd be happy to process those as well. So with Dr. Shepard, any sort of last words before we close out?
Nope, I'm sending you some information, the Start Right Guide example, and a link for some of the videos that might be helpful too.
All right. So just to close out, letting everybody know that all of this will be posted in the resource library, this webinar and the previous 3 that we did. And then also very shortly, we will be unveiling what we're calling the breakthroughs, which is basically sort of a documentary style blog, if you will, that pulls together all of these webinars, the materials, vignettes, video clips, and so on, in a way that might be more interesting to read or view or digest than sort of a straight list of resources. So be on the lookout for that episode to be released shortly. And with that, thank you everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the week.